Have you ever found yourself trapped in a cycle of thoughts you didn't ask for? Thoughts that seem to appear out of nowhere. Loud, uncomfortable, intrusive. They hang over you like a dark cloud. The what-ifs, the regrets, the imagined scenarios, the echoes of past mistakes, the quiet but persistent doubts about yourself. It's as if your mind becomes a room full of people talking at the same time, and you can't get everyone to quiet down. You're not alone in that experience. In fact, it's part of being human. Our minds are constantly producing thoughts, helpful ones, harmful ones, random ones, and unless we learn to manage them, they begin to control us. They shape our emotions, our actions, our identity, even our sense of purpose. And in the modern world where distractions multiply daily, maintaining mental clarity feels like an impossible task. But centuries ago, long before smartphones, social media, and constant noise, ancient philosophers faced their own storms. Political instability, war, disease, loss, betrayal, hardship. Life was just as overwhelming, maybe even more so. Yet these individuals did something extraordinary. They developed a simple and powerful way of thinking that allowed them to remain calm and focused despite the chaos around them. This way of thinking is known today as Stoicism. Stoicism is not about suppressing your emotions or pretending nothing bothers you. It is about creating a strong inner world where toxic thoughts lose their power. It is the art of mastering your mind so your mind no longer masters you. And many of the techniques the Stoics used are not ancient relics. They are surprisingly modern, clear, practical, and deeply effective. One of the first realizations the Stoics had is something most people never learn. Your thoughts are not you. You experience thoughts, but you are not identical to them. Thoughts come and go, like weather patterns or passing clouds. Some are helpful, some are harmful, but none of them are permanent. They are simply visitors. The problem is, we give some of these visitors too much power, especially the toxic ones. A toxic thought is simply a thought that harms your well-being, your sense of clarity, or your ability to act. It is often exaggerated, emotional, or rooted in fear. You might recognize some common ones. I'm not good enough. Nothing will work out. What will people think? I always mess things up. I can't trust anyone. I'll never succeed. The Stoics understood that these thoughts do not reflect truth. They reflect fear, insecurity, habit, or misinterpretation. Epictetus famously said, "People are disturbed not by things but by the view they take of them." If you look closely, you realize that nearly all toxic thoughts come from interpreting something in a destructive way. For example, someone doesn't respond to your message. Your mind creates a story about why. A challenge appears, you imagine the worst outcome. You make a mistake. You label yourself a failure. But the event itself is neutral. It is your interpretation that shapes your emotional response. This is why Stoicism begins with awareness. Learning to recognize a thought as just a thought. Once you observe it instead of automatically believing it, its power fades. When your mind tells you you're not good enough, you can step back and say, that's a thought, not a fact. That small shift changes everything. Another Stoic insight is the idea that much of our mental suffering comes from trying to control what we cannot control. The Stoics saw that life can be divided into two categories: what is within our control and what is not. You control your actions, decisions, effort, attitude, values, and how you interpret the world. You do not control the past, the future, other people's choices, external events, or outcomes. When you accept this truth, toxic thoughts lose oxygen. Anxiety begins with trying to manage things we have no influence over. When you stop fighting battles that cannot be won, like trying to control someone's opinion about you or worrying about every possible future scenario, you reclaim your energy, and that energy becomes clarity. Imagine how much mental space opens up when you stop overthinking things you cannot change. You stop replaying mistakes. You stop imagining the worst. You stop trying to predict what people might say. You begin to focus on what you can do right now with what you have, and this creates inner peace. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor who dealt with war, betrayal, illness, and enormous responsibility, practiced something called cognitive distancing. He would write phrases such as, "These are just thoughts," "This is just a sensation," or this is only my interpretation. He trained himself to separate his identity from the noise within his mind. When you say, I am anxious, you merge your identity with a temporary state. But when you say, I am experiencing a thought of anxiety, you create distance. You regain control.